This is Scott McIntyre and another intellectual video. Once again, looking at the brilliance of our intellectual class. And in this episode, we're again looking at errors in probabilistic thinking. And I'm particularly going after those at the Freakonomics podcast and book series where they may get it wrong. And in this particular episode, it's about their claims of whether a pool home is safer than a gun home. And I don't know these individuals personally. I have nothing against them, but we need to address some of the errors made in their books and on their podcasts. Some of these errors are quite serious because they lead to the idea that humans are irrational, they're dumb, they can't do math, and they make very poor decisions when it comes to risk. And that's really not the case. I'm going to try to address three different issues in these next upcoming videos. This one, how to think about guns and pools, the cost of fearing strangers, and also whether in general humans are irrational, and discussing some psychology evidence to show that that may or may not be the case. So in this video, we're going after their first claim. One of the more famous claims they have is that it's safer to send your child to a home that has a gun than a home that has a pool. And this seems extra sensational because, of course, people may think, well, of course it's safer to send your child to the pool home because guns are dangerous. And they kind of try to turn that on its head and say that maybe the gun homes are safer. They provide some evidence to that effect. And I'm not here to argue whether a gun home or a pool home is safer. In fact, what I'm going to argue is that you have to look at each situation individually. You can't just simply look at long-run data in populations that aren't randomly selected. Well, let's get into how this is the case. Here's the story they give. This is from the Freakonomics book that they published several years ago. Basically a scenario where a girl named Molly, who's 8, has two friends, Amy and Amani, and Amy's parents have a gun in the house. Amani's parents have a swimming pool. So Molly's parents think they're super smart because they send their child to Amani's house because it has the pool rather than the gun home, and they feel like they've done the right thing. But then the Freakonomics authors say, well, those parents of Molly really aren't very smart at all, because many more children die in pools than die by gunfire. And when you consider the number of pools and how many drown and number of guns and how many are shot, they basically say that it's not even close. You're so much safer going to a gun home than a pool home. Molly's roughly 100 times more likely to die in a swimming accident at Amani's house than in gunplay at Amy's house. And this kind of turned people's heads upside down when they thought about this, because most people that don't have guns are fearful of them, and now they're being told that it's a smarter choice, when in actuality we can't make any kind of decision about Molly and her situation, or that if her parents aren't smart at all, or if it isn't even close to have made this decision. In recent years, as early as 2013, the authors again revisited this scenario, saying that people are horrible at risk assessment in general. But we're going to see that that really isn't the case. Dubner continues to argue that we understand why people are poor at risk. It's basically because they're dumb, right? They can't do math. And some things are scary, so you're incapable. But we're going to see if that's really the case. So let's delve into this scenario. You know, I don't know Molly, I don't know her parents, but I'm going to try to stand up for them here. So Molly's 8, and her parents sent her to Amani's home with the swimming pool because math is hard. Are we to believe that they sent her over there to Amani's knowing she wasn't a good swimmer or couldn't swim, that she would be unsupervised? The pool was deeper than she was tall. It wasn't surrounded by a childproof gate, or that she wouldn't wear a flotation device. They were just too stupid to make that assessment. Unlikely. Is it at all possible that her parents might know the data that children are more likely to drown in a pool than in a gun home, but realize their 8-year-old child isn't representative of the population of children drowning in pools because she can swim. The pool is 3 feet deep and their child's 4 feet tall. There's a locked gate around the pool, which also has an alarm. Amani's parents never leave the kids unattended, and Molly never enters a pool alone and always wears a flotation device. Does it make sense to assume all those conditions exist in the population of children that do drown each year? I don't think so. We're not given that information. And speaking of Molly's parents, how is it that they know Amy's parents even have firearms? Do Amy's parents leave them laying around the house? Have they seen Amy playing with them? Have Amy's parents talked about guns and maybe how they should be handled safely? We don't have a clue, and neither do Levitt and Dobner. But Molly's parents, we can assume, may know. And as representatives of all American parents in this made-up scenario, it seems highly intellectual to assume they're too stupid and xenophobic to choose wisely. So let's use their logic. Here's some things you weren't told about Amy's home that I know. In Amy's home, they have guns and ammunition laying about on the countertops. The police have been called to Amy's home multiple times for discharging a firearm. Amy's constantly shooting animals in the neighborhood and even shot her brother. Molly loves playing with toy guns and was overheard saying how Amy's so lucky to have parents that let her shoot real guns, not the plastic crap her parents buy her. So now I know you're thinking, well, it's a good thing they sent her to the pool home if that's the way Amy's home is. But once again, you're falling victim to logic and not trusting the data. The data hasn't changed. Molly's still much more likely to die at the pool home than at the gun home, right? You just got to do the math. So let's run an experiment on that scenario. The intellectuals ignore those facts about Amy's home and send their kids off to Amy's. Molly's slightly challenged parents ignore those probability data and send their kid to the pool home. So who's making it home time for dinner? So once again, we have intellectuals not calculating risk correctly and committing a simple error, the error of sampling bias, assuming that the children that are drowning in pools or being shot at homes are randomly selected from the population, that there are no individual or scenario-specific variables that matter. Well, that's completely wrong. Yet, the one Freakonomics co-author and the economist Stephen Levitt says the answer to this question of pool home or gun home is incredibly easy. The swimming pool is far, far more dangerous than the gun home when it comes to young children. It doesn't depend. It's just random. The same way that lightning strikes and shark attacks are just random. Well, we've debunked that in a previous video. Now, Levitt and Dobner aren't the only ones who make these mistakes. It seems fairly common, but it's pretty important that we get this right. We need to understand that these situations are not random, and your kid, your situation may not be representative of those situations. So a child that might drown in a pool may be nothing like Molly and her friends that are going to the pool. However, for intellectuals, ignoring the math is not smart at all, and it's irrational. But that's simply wrong. So should you trust the data and science or trust yourself? Obviously, if you don't follow bogus data and science, it doesn't make one a science denier, although you'll most likely be called a science denier by an intellectual. It doesn't mean intellectuals are always wrong and you're always right, but be a skeptic, which means challenge the data, challenge the science, but don't be a cynic. Don't just blindly think all data and science is wrong. ask the right questions, understand the problems, and all the contributing factors. So for more videos debunking our intellectuals, see my other anti-intellectual videos on YouTube. Thanks.